People have been trying to rationalize the suspension of human liberties in the name of saving lives, or doing it for others, or for the greater good, conveniently forgetting that all dictatorships in human history had similar justifications for greater goods. So Ben Shapiro, known fake libertarian and masked authoritarian, once suggested that it was libertarian to coerce people to get injected.
Sure, it's a river, you're polluting it, but the problem is that pollution is affecting somebody else downstream. You don't have a right to do that, even in the most libertarian sort of vision of the world, right? That would violate tort law. So the idea that you have to have an environmental regulation that dictates that sort of thing makes some sense. When it comes to herd immunity for diseases, where you require 100% of the population to be vaccinated in order to prevent the transmission of diseases to people who can't actually have the vaccine, well, then you're talking about a non-libertarian principle being invoked, so I don't have a general problem with that.
Sorry, fanboys, but that argument is false, and I will explain why. I am surprised that Ben is considered to be good at debating, because he wouldn't stand a chance against me in a debate. Seriously. Now listen up and make up your own mind. This example of poisoning the river is a false equivalence fallacy, a strawman fallacy, a non sequitur fallacy, and a Humean blunder, since we cannot logically get an ought from an is. Overly educated and demonstrably low IQ people may say that even in libertarianism, you could force people to get injected with an arbitrarily chosen experimental unproven injection, because if you don't get said big corporate product, it's the equivalent of you poisoning a river and poisoning everyone else downstream. This is false on so many levels. Number one, this poisoning the river comparison is not the same thing. To poison a river, you need to take action which is outside of your default inert state. Your default is not poisoning a river. In the case of the deadly pathogen, your default is not being injected. You cannot harm anyone by not taking action outside of your default state. Oh, but you might say, but this time this novel paradigm-shifting viral pathogen is more dangerous, and therefore we need to arbitrarily change accepted human behavior. But this is also false. We always carry pathogens and transmit them to others with a potential to kill them. This is life. It's been like this for billions of years. I don't see any of you feeling particularly guilty about being part of the annual flu chain of transmission that ends up killing thousands and thousands every year. Number two, you cannot arbitrarily accuse someone of poisoning your river and then think you have the right to impose stuff on them. Where is the hard evidence? Where is the data? Do you know for a fact, enough to bet your life on it, that the uninjected are somehow more of a threat to you than your own reckless behavior? Is it proven, or is it just your paranoia? This is not how civilized society works. If anyone could accuse anyone of anything and then think they have a right to impose mandates on whatever, then we'll be living in chaos, because this is what chaos is. People feeling aggrieved and entitled enough to exert violence on others. In civilized societies, unlike the one Ben is living, you have to prove your case in a fair trial where you give your opponent the benefit of making their case too. This one-sided fact-checking and single narrative bullshit is the definition of superstitious witch doctor Spanish Inquisition theocracies, and anyone who likes it is welcome to leave civilized society and go live in a cave somewhere. Number three, Ben assumes that this injected product works to stop transmission, which is false. He has no possible depth or breadth of data to prove this, and neither did the manufacturers when they tried to impose this onto everyone. They even admitted this recently.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
Number 4. Ben's simplistic example assumes that taking the injection has no consequence to the user's health or the user's liberties and rights to bodily integrity. When you tell someone to stop poisoning a river, you cannot possibly damage his health by not taking action. But how certain is Ben that this injection has no health impact? Is he willing to bet his life on it? That it is not at all risky to health? Who is he to decide who lives or dies with all these excess deaths that only now are being half-assedly admitted, as well as all the people who died from delayed treatments from the lockdowns? And I don't care about the unsubstantiated claim, the benefits outweigh the costs. And even if that were true, nobody had data to make such a claim. If you are the one to be damaged for the sake of others, I don't think you'd be holding the same principle. People pretend to be moral when they think others are sacrificed to protect them. But when they are on the front line and they are the ones to be sacrificed, they sing a different tune. And by now we know that these injections have negative health impacts. What we don't know is how much, because we baptize every excess death by medical negligence or heart attack or died suddenly as anything we want, since diagnostic criteria are by now ridiculously arbitrary. No, Ben, you cannot enforce something that has any health impact on people. Where there's a risk, there's a choice. So fuck your fascistic greater good principle. Freedom is the greater good. Number 5. Ben also assumes that if you don't take the injected product, you are somehow transmitting. Why? If you don't take the product, you are either uninfected, or you have natural immunity after getting infected, or you are dead after getting infected. In either of these 3 cases, you are of no danger to anyone. Oh, you might say that you might be infecting others during the 7 days that your body needs to build natural immunity, right? Well, the same goes for the injected after getting the injection. They feel horrible for weeks and weeks and nobody's questioning whether they are infecting anyone during that time. Number 6. You cannot force people to do anything for your safety. No one treads on your rights by not doing anything. You forcing them, though, is treading on their liberties and rights. If you feel unsafe about something, then nobody's stopping you from taking action for yourself. In Ben's ridiculous river example, imagine paranoid people imagining that their neighbor upstream was unclean for some reason, of demented superstition, and demanded their neighbor submit to arbitrary measures. This means that anyone can then demand anything from anyone by using any arbitrary justification. Are you sure you want to live in a world like that? If you're scared, then you should take steps to protect yourself first, before you demand that others protect you. How can you demand that others protect you when you don't even protect yourself? People wearing silly cloth masks had the nerve to demand that I take an experimental injection to protect them, when they couldn't even wear an N99 or a military-grade gas mask that guarantees 100% protection from all respiratory pathogens. First, take all available safety measures before you even think about forcing others to protect you. And no, inconvenience is not an excuse, because forcing others is inconvenient to them. And if you value convenience more than your health, then don't expect others to value your health either. If you're afraid, you lock yourself at home. You keep your distance. You wear a mask. You marginalize yourself from society. You wash your hands 10 times a minute. You lose your job. Nobody's forcing you to do or not do these things. Only your TV-induced paranoid fear is forcing you to do these things. If you do these things, then those not doing these things cannot affect you because they infect each other, but not you. You have no right to demand they do anything for you because they owe you nothing. Just like you think you owe them nothing. And they ask nothing of you other than to leave them alone because they are not doing anything to affect you. Number 7. Even if the uninjected were a great threat to society and the injected had no way to protect themselves, you still cannot get an ought from an is. And even if the bad data and bad science about the pathogen that were given to us were true, and they were immensely manipulated, by the way, nobody gets to be the moral arbiter of enforcing measures. Where were the data about lockdown effectiveness, or about mask efficacy, or if lockdown health benefits would outweigh the health costs? Ben Shapiro could not possibly have the data about the injection benefits outweighing the costs, because he's not a prophet, nor does he have a time machine. You might claim your injection mandate is good, but at what cost? Did you consider the cost? Can you? If you can't, shut the fuck up. And even if you do, even if you know that the injection will kill fewer people than it saves, you cannot morally make the decision for those who will die. No, the ends do not justify the means. Those who say they do should voluntarily sacrifice themselves to donate all of their organs. They can die now and save at least 6 people. 1 heart, 1 liver, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys. Why aren't they making this sacrifice if the ends justify the means? So shut up. Number 8. If the fear-mongering campaign by scared little bitches like Ben was correct, then all the uninjected should be dead by now. Assuming their fear-mongering was valid, then all those science deniers transmitting and infecting each other should have been dead by now. But instead, we get the admission by the scientists that even their experimental, useless and dangerous product does not stop infection either. And I'm making the claim that it doesn't even limit transmission. No, I don't have any data to support this, but I don't need to because Hitchens' razor and burden of proof. Anything that can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And their assertions were made without evidence. Only bad science and bad data. Inferring bad policies from nonsensical, illogical mental processes. The default null hypothesis is true until the alternative hypothesis is proven sufficiently. To end this video, the entire fear-mongering divisive narrative of an epidemic wildly exaggerated using bad science, manipulated data, corporate interest and blatant scientific corruption was a test in which humanity failed. We were so concerned with our own supposed well-being that we naively swallowed every lie about what they told us was good for us and what they told us was threatening to us. And then we mindlessly adopted moral standards by unaccountable technocrats with everything to win and nothing to lose from their appeal to authority fallacy high horse. We believed and sided with disgusting TV anchors, pathetic celebrities, condescending late-night comedians, and scumbag politicians, and we made our own friends and family our enemy for being skeptical where there was a lot to be skeptical about. We will not forgive people like Ben Shapiro, not because of spite, but because if we forgive them, we enable them to abuse us and others again. Forgive for yourself, but don't forgive for them. Unless they truly want to make amends and promise to change their moral compass. Until then, fuck Ben Shapiro. If you agree or disagree with my argumentation, leave a comment below, but at least respect yourself enough to explain why and make a case for your argument. If not, it makes no difference to me. Thank you for listening. You're awesome.
The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Why are so many vaccinated people dying? So vaccinations work really well, but they're not, they can't protect everyone, and that's why you need a multiple layers of protection, and that's why we advise people to take care of our vulnerable people. We ask people to take those additional precautions. So we will tragically still see deaths in individuals that are vaccinated. But that doesn't mean the vaccines are so good at protection.
40% in some hospitals, 40% of the people who have COVID don't necessarily have problematic COVID. They're there because they got in a car accident. They're there because, they bumped their head. And they're being included as in the hospital with COVID. That number seems kind of misleading.
If you look at the children who are hospitalized, many of them are hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. And what we mean by that, if a child goes in the hospital, they automatically get tested for COVID, and they get counted as a COVID hospitalized individual, when in fact they may go in for a broken leg or appendicitis or something like that.